This week on Hometown Ghost Stories. Palm Beach in Florida is world-renowned for its beauty and hotels. It's also well known as a hotbed of paranormal activity. From haunted beaches to homes and businesses, this picturesque vacation destination has been more of a nightmare for many. Tonight, we'll dive into the haunted hotels, beaches, stores, and the infamous Riddle House, which has gained national attention for the terrifying haunts that have plagued this former Gatekeeper's cottage for decades. Palm Beach, 1995. The house was late, 20 minutes late to be exact. It was 7:20 a.m. and the house was supposed to arrive at 7 a.m. sharp. A 12-man crew stood with their tool bags on the curb, some with arms crossed, others sitting on their hard hats waiting. The foreman, a burly man named Mark, shouted at someone over the CB radio in his truck. His jowls shook and jiggled with every burst of angry words that spewed from his mouth. Just as he slammed the receiver down, the big truck hauling the massive pieces of the recently dismantled Riddle House turned onto the street. Mark quickly began barking orders at his men. With the late start, he knew it would be a late day, and he was adamant about keeping a tight schedule. Eddie was the youngest and newest guy on the crew. He had worked a couple jobs with Mark's crew, but this one was different. He was used to new construction and remodels, traditional builds, things like that. He honestly never heard of cutting an old house in half and reconstructing it in a new location, and certainly not to a house with a reputation like the Riddle House. Rumor had it, the house was haunted, and Eddie found himself wondering that if a haunted house was dismantled and relocated, what happened to the spirits who inhabited it? Were they left behind, or did they stay in the house? He hoped he wouldn't find out. He was wrong. Despite the delay, Mark kept to his word about keeping on schedule. The house was assembled by dark and loomed ominously against the twinkling backdrop of the mid-August dusk. Eddie was stacking all of the tools in the front room on the first floor when Mark barked at him to stack them all in the attic. Eddie kept his cool, but he knew this was a meaningless task assigned to him strictly because he was the new guy and it amused the others. Eddie grudgingly began picking up the tools and carrying them to the stairs when he heard Mark call out from behind him to lock up when he was done. Then the trucks all pulled out and Eddie was left alone in the house by himself. He felt childish, but couldn't help the irrational sensation of fear that crept up on him. It was a windy night and the house groaned and creaked, presumably because it was old and that it had been disturbed and probably swayed slightly in the wind. The house was secure, but they needed one more day to shore it up, so the creaking was probably normal. At least that's what Eddie hoped. Trip after trip, he stacked the tools in the attic beneath the front window, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. The longer he was in the house, the more his mind played tricks on him. When he was ascending the stairs, he kept hearing another set of footsteps behind him, thumping a fraction of a second after his own footsteps. He'd spin around, but nobody would be behind him. Eddie tried to ignore it, but it was causing his anxiety to intensify. Finally, he made his final trip up to the attic and set the last saw down with all of the other tools positioned neatly beneath that front window. Then he hurried down the stairs, out the front door, making sure to lock it, hopped into his truck, and headed straight home. The next morning, Eddie pulled up to the site to see Mark fuming in the front yard. His face was bright red, and his jowls were jiggling furiously. He wondered to himself what the issue could be this early in the morning, but he immediately saw the problem. The attic window was broken, and all of the tools that had been stacked in the attic were strewn across the lawn. Hammers, saws, an air compressor, tool belts and bags, shards of broken glass, as if they had been thrown from the window. Eddie didn't know what to say, but Mark did. He stuck a finger in Eddie's face and fired him. "You think this is funny?" Mark asked. Eddie swore he had nothing to do with it and suggested that maybe someone had broken in and done it, but Mark shouted at him that the door was still locked and that nobody had been inside. Eddie just stared up at the broken attic window in disbelief. Nobody was going to believe that he didn't do it, and he was convinced that someone or something in that house was clearly displeased with its abrupt demolition and relocation. I'm Jesse Wilkins, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories, the Riddle House, Palm Beach, Florida. When settlers first arrived in the area that would be known as Palm Beach, it was known as Lake Worth, named for General William Jenkins Worth, who fought in the Second Seminole War. The pioneers struggled to clear land for their homes to make room for their crops. In 1872, the first permanent pioneers arrived, and according to their accounts, Palm Beach received its name from a shipwreck that washed ashore in January of 1878 with a load of 20,000 coconuts. These were not native to South Florida. Regardless of the ship sinking, they would go on to plant all of these coconuts. This was an effort to launch a commercial coconut industry. In 1880, they built their first hotel, the Coconut Grove House, which opened to accommodate tourists as word of the area's beauty spread northward. In the early 1890s, the island community was well established, and they built several more hotels, including Henry Flagler's Royal Provinciana Hotel. Businesses and winter residences began popping up all over the area. As the pioneer era came to an end in 1894, the Florida East Coast Railroad arrived within the next 2 years. The railroad tracks crossed Lake Worth, so the trains could deliver their passengers directly to the Flagler System hotels, which included the Palm Beach Inn directly on the ocean. This hotel would soon be renamed the Breakers, but was destroyed by a fire in 1903. Henry Flagler immediately began work on a larger, more luxurious hotel at the same location, which was opened 1 year later. After just 22 years, this one too would be destroyed by yet another fire, and was replaced by the magnificent stone structure, which continues to serve as a Palm Beach landmark today. Palm Beach was incorporated in 1911. 35 men and women met at the Palm Beach Hotel on the evening of April 17th and voted to incorporate what was only the second recognized municipality in Palm Beach County. They also elected their first officials. Over 100 years later, thanks to the relentless efforts of Henry M. Flagler, Palm Beach is a fully developed community, world-renowned for its beauty, quality of life, and small-town character. But Palm Beach isn't just known as a vacation destination. It also has a wide range of supernatural activity dating back to its earliest days. From haunted homes to businesses and hotels, Palm Beach is said to be Florida's epicenter for paranormal activity. Henry Flagler didn't only build hotels. He also built Whitehall, a 55-room mansion, which was a wedding gift for his wife, Mary Lily Keenan. This served as a winter residence for the couple. They moved in on February 6, 1902. Each year they would travel to this home in their own private railcars. The mansion was praised by newspapers of the day as one of the most elegant and beautiful homes ever constructed. The New York Herald hailed Whitehall as, quote, more wonderful than any palace in Europe, grander and more magnificent than any private dwelling in the world. Henry Flagler died of injuries he sustained after falling down a flight of marble stairs at Whitehall in 1913 at the age of 83, and his wife died just 4 years later. The home was left to her niece, Louise Clisby Wise Lewis, who sold the property to investors. They constructed a 300-room, 10-story addition to the west side of the building, obliterating Mr. Flagler's office and the housekeeper's apartment. They also altered the original kitchen and pantry area, and it was turned into Palm Beach's second largest hotel. In 1959, the building was saved from demolition by one of Henry's granddaughters, Jean Flagler Matthews. She established the Henry Morrison Flagler Museum Nonprofit Corporation, which purchased the building. The upper 10 stories of the hotel addition were demolished in 1963 to prepare the museum for the public. Today, Whitehall is a National Historic Landmark and is open to the public. Many believe that the Flagler's ghosts still reside in the mansion. According to John Roth, a night watchman at Whitehall, in 1974, he saw the full-bodied apparition of Henry Flagler himself. Quote, he was just standing there, wearing a dark suit and tie. I had a good look, and then he vanished. Strange events have been happening at Whitehall for years, including the silver settings that reportedly moved from a top shelf to a bottom one inside a locked cabinet. According to Palm Beach Daily News, a ceiling lamp in the top of an urn crashed to the floor and plates inexplicably broke. Another watchman said that he saw the ghost of Mary Lily many times on the upstairs porch. Whether these spirits in the home are in fact the Flaglers, whatever supernatural beings are in this home don't seem to be too happy about sharing their house, or they could possibly be upset about all of the renovations that have taken place since their passing. Visitors to Whitehall have experienced a wide range of paranormal activity, from pottery being damaged to doors that refused to open, and one cleaning lady even got slapped on the behind while in the home. But not all employees are convinced that the building is haunted. According to John Blades, the executive director of the Flagler Museum, quote, "There are no ghosts, there never have been ghosts, and there never will be ghosts at Whitehall." Retired director Grant Bedford blames the ghost sightings on overactive imaginations and even offered to give $1,000 to anyone who could show him a ghost. Even the beaches of Palm Beach are said to be haunted by a wide range of spirits, from phantom pirates to Native American ghosts and even the ghosts of drowning victims. In the mid-90s, an audio engineer was tasked with the job of recording the sound of ocean breezes as part of an audio compilation aimed to help people fall asleep. He set up his equipment on a relatively calm day, weather-wise, but the recording sounded as if he had set up microphones during a hurricane. But it wasn't just the howling winds on the recording that caught his attention. There was also the sound of hammering, the sounds of people running around, scratching, rapping, and even the sounds of chanting. Bewildered, he went to the hotel bar to grab a drink and try to wrap his head around what had gone wrong. As he explained his experience to the bartender, the man smiled and explained that what he experienced wasn't exactly out of the ordinary. The bartender was of Seminole heritage and explained that these were the sounds of his people from long ago. He suspected that these were the sounds of the Seminoles setting up for the Green Corn Festival, which was celebrated to inaugurate the summer growing season and to celebrate the Seminoles' New Year. Quote, "If you stay around for the festival, you might even be able to observe them." The Gucci store at 150 Worth Ave is not the original location. Gucci was originally located at 256 Worth Ave, Palm Beach, but that location was having some issues with a haunting that was escalating to unbearable levels. It's said that Gucci moved locations in 2010 to escape the haunting. The origins of the paranormal activity are unknown, but it became clear that they were dealing with a poltergeist. Things started out like many poltergeist cases. Lights would flicker, voices would call people's names, and the activity seemed to mimic playful ghostly behavior. Doors would refuse to unlock, then when staff would give up and start to walk away, they would hear the hinge press against itself and the door would open on its own. Paranormal researchers were called in to help find out what was going on, and they feared that they could be dealing with something demonic in the building. They even attempted to perform an exorcism on the building, but to no avail. They tried several more unofficial exorcisms of various religions, including Jewish, traditional African, and Catholic. They also tried smudging, but again, with no luck. At least 2 psychics were brought in, and as the poltergeist activity escalated, Gucci finally decided just to pick up and move to a new building, and it's said that both buildings have been dormant ever since. Death has surrounded the Riddle House since it was built. In the early 1900s, the building was used as a funeral parlor. It would later be used as a private residence and would continue to see its fair share of tragedy. The Victorian Painted Lady Style House was constructed in 1905 at 327 Acacia Street in downtown West Palm Beach. It was originally called the Gatekeeper's Cottage and served as a home to the overseers of the Woodlawn Cemetery, which was located just across the street. Grave robbing was a major problem at the time, since families would typically bury their loved ones with their most expensive jewelry. It was the job of those who lived at the Gatekeeper's Cottage to keep an eye on the graveyard and to keep the grave robbers out. Ghost sightings at the Gatekeeper's Cottage are nothing new and date back to its earliest days. The first supernatural sightings were of a big man named Buck who used to work at the cemetery. According to local legend, Buck was killed in town after an argument escalated and he met his violent end. His ghost has been seen walking the grounds around the house and even on the porch of the cottage where the cemetery workers would often eat their meals. Carl Riddle became the first city manager and superintendent of public works in the 1920s. West Palm Beach offered the former Gatekeeper's cottage as a residence for Riddle. He just had to pick up the extra task of keeping an eye on the cemetery. It wasn't long before one of Riddle's employees at the home ran into some financial problems and fell into a deep depression, leading to his untimely death. The man hanged himself from the rafters in the attic of the Riddle House. After this tragedy, the beam used to hold the rope was permanently removed from the top story. The death seemed to be a catalyst for a darker haunting that followed. Carl Riddle recounted in his personal diary how the family had trouble keeping help in the home. The staff would report the sound of chains rattling on the stairs and voices murmuring. Many of them quit, refusing ever to come back to the Riddle House. After the Riddle family moved out, several businesses attempted to set up shop in the home. None of them would last. Eventually, the building was passed on to the Palm Beach Atlantic College and used as a girls' dormitory. By 1980, the building was abandoned and fell into disrepair. It was scheduled to be demolished by the city, but at the last minute, a man named John Riddle, who happened to be Carl Riddle's nephew, offered to dismantle the house and move it to Yesteryear Village to go on permanent display. The city agreed to this deal since the land that the house was sitting on was probably worth more than the house itself, and the house was moved. During the reassembly, the dark haunting that once plagued the building reared its ugly head again. Carpenters who were working on the project would show up in the morning and find their tools thrown from the attic and on the ground below. Windows on the third floor would be found mysteriously broken, and at one point, they had to pause reconstruction for 6 months because the workers were so overwhelmed with the unexplained activity that they were experiencing inside the Riddle House. During a private tour, 2 figures were spotted in early 20th century clothing. Guests of the tour, believing that these finely dressed folks were just actors on the tour, commented on how dashing the pair looked. But when an old photo showing the original Riddle House was shown to the group, they were shocked to see that the couple that they had just seen in person was in the photo. They looked around to find the pair of actors, but nobody was there, and they were never seen again. Another visitor who had scheduled a private tour was struck in the head by a piece of wood while in the staircase. They claimed that the piece of wood just came out of nowhere. A maintenance worker was also attacked while cleaning and refused to ever step foot in the Riddle House again. Several witnesses claimed to have spotted the ghastly image of a hanging torso in the attic window, and typically assume that it must just be a mannequin that they are seeing. However, there are no mannequins in the attic. Today, the Riddle House is regarded as one of the most active haunts in South Florida, and Forbes ranks the Riddle House as the most haunted home in the entire state. I'm Jesse Wilkins, and this is Hometown Ghost Stories, Palm Beach, Florida. What is going on, folks? Welcome to Hometown Ghost Stories, episode number, 143. I am Jesse Wilkins. I'm joined by Rob Coakley. Hello, Rob.
I'm excited that we can potentially go investigate the remnants of a Gucci store when we go to Florida.
Yeah, I don't know what's in that spot now. I'm assuming, now it's a pretty high-end area of Palm Beach. I'm assuming that there's another store in there now. But I like to think that maybe it's a abandoned Gucci store, and maybe there's some leftover really expensive clothing that they just didn't feel like moving, that we could call that guy from eBay to come steal, because we refuse to steal from these places. We're also joined by legendary thief Dave Wilkins. Hello, Dave.
Hello. Just put it on the list.
Yes, absolutely. So Palm Beach looks amazing. I believe I've been there. I'm not entirely sure. But we're kind of doing a little bit of Palm Beach, a little bit of West Palm Beach, formerly West Palm Beach, I guess, because the Riddle House has now moved to Yesteryear, which is a couple miles away. But Yesteryear Village looks pretty cool. This is kind of like a collection of just old homes that necessarily aren't all from the same time period. I guess there's a home across the street from where the Riddle House now stands that was like a former Civil War captain, his house or something like that. And they said when they moved the Riddle House in, the activity seemed to bounce back and forth between these houses where you get broken windows of one house, then broken windows in the other house, all sorts of activity. We'll hop into that a little bit, but yesteryear looks like a pretty cool spot. So anyways, I want to give a big shout out to everybody who's hanging out in live chat. We got 20 gifted Hometown Ghost Stories memberships on YouTube from Another Vice. And then Ryan P came in with 10. And then Tess with her patented 50 bomb of Hometown Ghost Stories memberships. Cannot thank you guys enough for your generosity there. Huge shout out to everyone hanging out in live chat. It's good to see everybody.
And shout out to our RIP of the week, JP.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I have no idea if we've dedicated to JP before, but I was like, that doesn't look familiar, so I think I'm going to throw it to JP, who was in chat earlier, I do believe, or it's another JP. But RIP to JP, who is alive and well. We hope. And
we do hope.
Always good to have you guys on our VIP list. If you're looking to get an episode dedicated to you, consider joining the VIP tier on Patreon, and you could get an episode dedicated to you. So we are back in Florida for another episode. We've covered Florida a few times. Obviously, the very haunted St. Augustine. And now we're
the Corpse Bride. We covered that whole situation.
That was a situation.
That's what some people will say, is that was a situation.
Yes, indeed.
Key West. That was Key West. We also covered Key West in a regular episode. So we've done Florida a few times.
Yeah, Florida has plenty of haunted locations, and we just touched on a few of them here. So just kind of jumping around Palm Beach. We started off by talking about some of the hotels that Henry Flagler had built. Now, this guy is basically responsible for West Palm existing. I mean, he didn't give up on it. A lot of people, they would come in, they had so much trouble clearing the brush, and then you're probably dealing with alligators and all sorts of Florida type things. And this guy was just determined. He built a hotel, he'd burn it down. He built a hotel again, it burned down. He'd build another one, it would burn down. Did I say he burned it down? He didn't burn down any of his hotels, but maybe he was
allegedly. I'm not sure if insurance fraud was rampant back in that day.
I don't know. Alligators ate one. You know, it happens. These are Florida things. You never know what's going to happen down in Florida. But he also built a 55-room mansion, and I'm looking at him like, finally, a haunted building that Henry Flagler has something to do with that isn't a hotel. But the first thing that they did when he died is turn it into a goddamn hotel. So that one was a hotel as well. Now this one still stands. It looks magnificent. If you didn't, if for audio listeners, if you haven't watched the video or seen footage of Whitehall, which is now the Flagler Museum, I highly recommend you do so. Reminds me of the Newport Mansions. It's just absolutely stunning inside. I am shocked. I mean, they must have done a lot of work to refurbish this place, because I am shocked that they even were thinking of tearing it down. It's insane to me. Now they're probably going to tear it down and build a whole other hotel in its place, but it does look good. Donnie says maybe they should have built a firehouse. So this was the time when, and we kind of discussed this in the last few episodes, because you have just cities being decimated by fires, these little Wild West towns getting completely wiped out by fires. And then, they started building buildings out of concrete instead of wood, and then kind of solved that issue for the most part. Still have fires, obviously, to this day, which is why you still have fire departments, But
good thing.
Yeah, some inside knowledge for you there.
Well, our state's burning down right now, so there's
that as well.
Very fitting.
Right.
What do you mean? What's happening?
What do you mean? The entire Blue Hills is on fire right now.
I actually had no idea. I just agreed with you because, like
I walked out of my house last night and I smelled fire, and I walked around my house to make sure it wasn't on fire. And then, I get like the ring alarms, and they were like, everyone else was like, we smell fire. And then it was reported that it was from the Blue Hills. That's how strong the fire was.
That's crazy.
It was blowing, the wind was carrying the smell of the fire all the way to Bridgewater.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. Blue Hills somewhere near Tennessee, I believe.
Right, yeah. Right. Speaking of not knowing where we are, Pops drops in chat, says, Jesse, Florida is not in the West. That's not what I was saying. I was saying we covered a Wild West town last week. Was it West? I don't know, but it wasn't Florida West. So
it was Idaho.
My point is we're covering towns that have burnt down because of the structure and the way that they built these buildings. And then they changed things. And since then, the hotel that he replaced the one that burnt down twice with is still standing to this day. It hasn't burnt down. So has it caught on fire? I don't know. But still standing, which is good. But Whitehall was kind of his vacation home. He built it as a wedding gift to his wife. Obviously, they had a good amount of money because this was a pretty serious wedding gift. If you look at this place, it was absolutely amazing. But
Still not as good as the wedding gift I gave you.
Yes. So for viewers who don't know, Rob gave me a sack of, what was it? Sacagawea coins, the golden $1 coins.
Yes, 300 of them.
In like a
in a pirate booty bag.
Yeah. Not only that, you hand it to me at the wedding. So I'm just walking around with this giant, looks like I just robbed a bank in like a Looney Tunes episode or something. It's just this burlap sack of coins. What the hell am I supposed to do with this thing?
You always wanted to be a pirate.
I think you even drew a money symbol on it with a Sharpie, if I remember correctly, which was a nice touch. But anyways, so second to that gift is this gift that Henry Flagler gave his wife, which was a 55-room mansion that was their winter residence, which is wild because to go back to Newport, if you look at some of the Newport mansions out in the Wild West, if you look at those mansions, a lot of these were just summer getaways. Now, obviously in Florida, you have winter getaways because of the weather shift, and you look at this thing and you're like, well, what is your real house like? Because this thing is the size of a hotel. Like it's insane. And so these people had some money. But
Rob was actually super torn between whether to get you a stack of gold coins or a 50-bedroom mansion. And I talked him into the coins.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because he was leaning towards mansion.
I couldn't hand you the mansion at your wedding. That was the thing.
Yeah. Well, only a 50-room mansion would not have sufficed because this was a 55-room mansion. So
that's right.
Yeah, this is much better. But all jokes aside, Henry died from injuries inside the home. Now, I don't think he died inside the home. He was probably taken to a hospital, but he fell down the marble stairs and died of his injuries. Then his wife died just 4 years later. They were pretty old at the time anyways. I think Henry was like 83 years old when he died. I would assume his wife was around the same age. And it was left to his wife's niece, Louise Clisby Wise Lewis. So it's Louise Clisby Wise Lewis. So Louise Lewis. Yes, but
Lewis.
She sold the property to investors, and then they went ahead and just turned this thing into a hotel. But it is said to be haunted by some, and it's said to be absolutely not haunted by some, which I found this guy's statement actually hilarious. The guy who does not believe that it's haunted. And what was his exact quote? Oh, it was from John Blades. Cool last name, by the way.
Yeah, it's a great name.
Quote, "There are no ghosts. There have never been ghosts, and there will never be ghosts at Whitehall." This guy's fed up.
This dude is definitely haunting this place when he dies. There's no question. He's made it so that he is going to be the one haunting here.
Yeah, I think Steph brought it up in chat. That was like, now he's going to be cursed to haunt this building forever. But I mean, I get it. If you work at the place and you don't want it to have a haunted reputation, and you just kind of, you're the museum guy and you're just trying to preserve its history. We've seen a lot of places like that. I get it if you're like, no, it's not haunted. I've never seen anything. But you can't take the position of there will never be ghosts. Like, that's not up to you, regardless if you believe in them or not. It's not up to you. Now, there are other staff that have worked here that have seen full-bodied apparitions of Mr. Flagler and of his wife. Now, his wife, sure, her ghost has been seen on the balcony, I guess, many times. And then I believe that Henry's ghost has only been seen maybe once by a different staff member who saw him in a full suit. He said he was wearing a dark suit, and he saw him for a little bit, and then he disappeared after that. So these are some pretty serious hauntings, and it's from staff members. It's not just from visitors. It's not just some random blog post online. These are guys who have been interviewed, went on the record to say that they have seen full-bodied apparitions here. But then you have Mr. Blades, who says, no, he doesn't believe it. Then there was even another guy, Grant Bedford, who offered to give $1,000 to anyone who can show him a ghost. Now, we don't make the rules, but that's not really how these things work. But maybe if you can get a picture of a ghost, I'm sure he would quickly try to debunk it as literally anything but a ghost. Seems like that kind of guy. But it seems that the staff here are part of the no fun police.
Well, let us come investigate it. Give us a chance to collect this $1,000. Give us a night in the place. I challenge the staff members, the chairman of the board, if you will, Mr. Blades, Mr. whoever this other guy is, put that $1,000 in a briefcase, hang it from one of the chandeliers. Let us come and do an investigation. And if we find evidence, we will climb the ladder. We will take that briefcase. We will take that $1,000 and still be net negative on our trip to Florida.
It would be hilarious if they put $1,000 in a briefcase, because if it's all hundreds, then it would be really underwhelming when you open the briefcase. Like, shit. Didn't need to. Could have settled for now.
Here's your briefcase.
Yeah, exactly. Might not have needed the whole brief. And then jokes on us. The briefcase costs $800, and we're left with the chain. That's probably how that would go. But at least we'd catch a ghost. That would be fun. But no, Whitehall looks absolutely amazing. Even if we don't get to do an investigation there, I mean, Palm Beach would be a great excuse to do a paranormal trip, because that is a beautiful, beautiful place to take a trip to. Part of the reason why New Orleans is up there that was why we were like, we're going to New Orleans, because New Orleans is so much fun. You know what I mean? Palm Beach would be a nice little trip. But we discussed.
Well, I hope you're ready for Kansas and Iowa, because that's
the beaches of Kansas are to die for. But speaking of beaches, we also have haunted beaches in Palm Beach, which we talked about a little bit. You have this guy, he was an audio engineer, and he got the ever so exciting job of recording the sounds of the ocean for people to fall asleep to, which is nice, because sometimes I make songs that people just fall asleep to anyways, and that's not my intention. But this guy with the job of making people falling asleep by recording things that are so boring and calming, but he went out there to record it. He said he recorded on a relatively calm day, set up his microphones, and the stuff that came back on the recording was the opposite of what he had experienced. It was a nice, calm, quiet day, nobody around. In the recording, he said it sounded like an absolute hurricane. He could hear people running by. He could hear voices. And more specifically, he was hearing rhythmic noises and chanting. And he was just completely bewildered. So as any of us would do, he was like, well, I'm going to go drink this off and be upset. And he went to the bar and he's grabbed a couple drinks, and he's talking to the bartender, who happened to be of Seminole heritage. And the guy was like, oh, I know what you heard. He's like, you heard the Seminole people, like that have passed away. There weren't Seminoles actively on the beach, but he's basically saying you were hearing the sounds of ghosts that have passed away. And he said they were probably setting up, it was around that time of year where they would normally be setting up for the Green Corn Festival. And that's celebrated to inaugurate the summer growing season, I guess. But yeah, he said basically if you stick around long enough, you might even see some of these ghosts, not just hear them. So I don't have a recording of this, but that was the story about some of the beaches of Palm Beach. So can you
imagine coming across the beach and finding that recording equipment, the things that we would do to mess up that recording, because we're the worst people on the planet, just as he's trying to record the ocean.
We do improv some great hurricane voices. You haven't heard us just completely make hurricane noises, and you're missing out.
Dave, give us your.
Wow.
That's the cat that got caught. That got caught in the hurricane.
Yeah, that cat was
the lazy cat.
That cat's annoyed by hurricanes. That was that sound that you just heard there. But they also say on these beaches that people have experienced a wide range of things, from obviously, so there's the ghosts of drowning victims. We also just talked about the Native American spirits, and then there's also phantom pirates. I don't have any stories about them, but that's on the list. So check that off your bingo card. We have talked about ghost pirates. So I guess they're here, but I don't know what the full history of pirates in Palm Beach is, but maybe something we'll dive into when we do a part 2, because we didn't really technically cover West Palm Beach. I know I put it in the title because that's where the Riddle House used to be. But we mostly just talked about Palm Beach. I don't know if it's one of those things where they really separated, or if it's all one big
The Riddle House was in Palm Beach for the majority of its life.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So far.
Yeah.
So far, yes. Well, we're covering it as of right now, so.
True. Yeah. So there were hauntings at the previous location. There are even arguably more hauntings at the current location. So a little bit of both, a little bit of both here, but all Palm Beach, just west and regular Palm Beach. But we got our first Gucci store haunting. That's fun.
This is a first.
Yeah. I wish I could find more about it. There was limited resources. All of the websites and sources that I checked seemed to be just kind of regurgitating the same story, but they had a poltergeist. So according to all sources that I found, there was a poltergeist at the original Gucci store location. And this was originally at 256 Worth Ave. They moved right down the street to 150 Worth Ave, which it wasn't a big move, but apparently that's a little high-end shopping section. So they obviously didn't want to go too far away. But they did a lot to get rid of this. Now, the haunting started like a lot of other poltergeist cases start, with your lights flickering, names being called, doors kind of behaving strangely. This was a different one because a lot of times you'll get doors that will stick, or you see doors opening or closing on their own. But this one, it was almost like the poltergeist was pretending that the door was stuck. And then when the staff would throw up their hands and walk away, like, forget it, this door is not going to open, then it'd be like, oh, I'm just kidding. And it would just pop open the door for them, and then they would unlock it. So it's kind of a unique take on the very common door haunt that you get in a lot of haunted locations. But then I guess things started really escalating, where items were being moved around and broken, and it got so bad that they started reaching out to different kinds of priests. So they didn't just call in the Catholics like you see in a lot of exorcist cases and try to do an exorcism. And when it doesn't work, then they just keep bringing them back. When it didn't work, they tried other religions. They called in some Jewish religious folks and what rabbis maybe, or whoever would handle the exorcisms in Jewish religion. Forgive me for not being super familiar with it, but they did that. And they also did traditional African exorcism, and none of it worked. So none of it worked. Everyone failed at their exorcisms. It was an exorcism on the building, not an individual. And then they called in psychics. They did smudging. They tried everything. So I will say they did do their due diligence on trying to alleviate the issue of the poltergeist.
I mean, if the poltergeist is going around breaking things, the Gucci store is like, we can't have this.
We couldn't afford serious problem. One of these. Everything that you break is thousands of dollars. Yeah, this is not good. Not good. But they also brought in some paranormal investigators, and according to them, or at least one of them, I guess he kept hearing the sounds of dripping water, which isn't that uncommon in a haunting, but he immediately was worried that that's a sign of the demonic, which I've never heard before. The dripping water being a sign of the demonic. Dave, have you heard that before?
No, I would associate that with an elemental poltergeist.
Or a leaky sink.
Or a leaky sink.
Yeah.
No, that would be my second guess.
Yeah.
The first assumption would be elemental poltergeist.
This is why I got fired as a plumber. Well, your first problem is you absolutely have an elemental poltergeist. I can't fix it. Call on a priest. They're like, I'm not calling this guy ever again. But I hadn't heard that. I mean, I'll dive a little bit more into it. But
Dave's plumbing and exorcisms.
Yeah. So that's the Gucci store thing. And then they just picked up and moved. And I guess since then, both of the locations have gone dormant. Again, I don't know what sits at 256 Worth Ave now. I guess we can look it up and see. Let's find out right now, live on Hometown Ghost Stories.
While you're doing that, can you imagine if you went to the Gucci store and you bought something and a ghost was attached to the item you bought at the Gucci store? Like, it's just too much money to be spending to be haunted by it, right? Like, it's just too much. Yeah. You should only be haunted by stuff at the dollar store.
That's true.
In my opinion, because I don't want to spend $2,000 and then have a elemental poltergeist follow me to the house and ruin my toilets, and Dave can't fix it.
Well, yeah, Dave just refuses to. But if we take a look at the building now, this is the current view. Looks like 256. It's a Peter Millar, if you will. Looks like more fancy shops. So I believe this is it on this side, although it could be either one of these. But that's what we're looking at there. So glad we did that. That was really good. We got to the bottom of that. There's a new store.
Thanks.
Will they let us investigate? I don't know. But according to a few sources there, the haunting has slowed down there. But that is our poltergeist of the Gucci store. That's pretty fun.
Do you think the Gucci ghost is like a little silkier than other normal ghost?
Definitely.
Would say most likely.
Yes.
So there was another one that I wanted to hop into before we get into the main story of the episode, which is obviously the Riddle House, which is what we've been talking about. But there is one, and I kind of left it out because it seems to be a whole lot of local legend, but we have the Witch's Wall. So this one is kind of referred to as Coral Cut by the less superstitious residents of Palm Beach. This is a road that cuts through a hill made of coquina. I don't know how to pronounce that word.
That's illegal.
Coquina. But it's basically like it's a rocky substance that's made up of ancient seashells and coral. But coquina? I feel like coquina would be the way to pronounce that. Probably completely wrong. We know I'm not very good at this kind of thing. But anyway, so the wall along the road is roughly 200 feet high. So that's pretty cool. Kind of almost seems like a gorge almost, but that's really high up. So it gives it a very creepy vibe, especially if you drive down it at night. But locals know that despite the legends surrounding the road and the scary stories where they say that it leads to a witch's house, they say that it leads to, there used to be an asylum there. In all reality, today anyways, it just leads to the country club. So not quite as scary if you follow it all the way to the end.
You don't know. You don't know what's going on in that.
You don't know what goes on at the Palm Beach Country Club, but there's all sorts of stories that surround this small window that's creepily covered by a metal cage. And I'll pull up an image of the creepy window that is along the road here so you guys can see it. And basically, it seems like a lot of legends were born because this window is kind of creepy. So I'll share this on screen now so folks can take a look at it. But here is the window that's just kind of inside the cliff when you drive along.
That's cool.
And it's got like these metal bars on it. So they assume that there used to be a structure above it, whether it was an asylum, whether it was a witch's house. But I mean, it's got enough of a legend where they started calling it the witch's wall. And
it looks like a hobbit jail.
A little bit, right? Yeah, but it is kind of cool. So it is fun. But basically, legend has it that there was a witch that lived above the coral and had a nasty little habit. She had a real bad habit of kidnapping children and locking them inside the cage until they were dead. So you gotta kick that habit. Real bad habit.
Are we just getting the bad kids? I mean,
it just says children. So anyways, she'd keep them in the cage until they were dead. And then she would stuff the corpses into the holes in the coral, and the child's soul would coral. And the child's soul would forever be trapped in the cage. And by forever trapped in the cage, I mean, you could easily release this child's soul by walking by it and touching the wall, apparently. So it's kind of a weird legend. This is why I didn't throw it in the episode, because it's legend, you know how these things go.
It does sound like a legend that someone was just sitting around a campfire and a kid was just saying, and it was from like a father that wasn't a good storyteller. He's like, and then you just touch the wall and the spirit goes away.
Yeah, but guess what? It doesn't end there, because this witch had this nasty little habit of rising again and replacing the dead children with more living children until they were dead, and then she trapped their souls too. So basically, we need everyone down there in Palm Beach to go touch that wall. But then, I mean, then she's got to come back and get more kids. I don't know. Anyway, so you can see why this didn't make it into the episode. It's a pretty wacky legend. So there's another legend that tells the tale slightly differently. In another case, a woman lost her husband in a car accident on the Country Club Road. Then her son moved away shortly after, which caused her to go mad. That's it for that legend.
Oh,
so I don't know what the hell that has to do with that cage. Yeah,
it's called the news. It's just called something that happened.
Another legend claims that the house on top of the mound was once an asylum, and one patient, nicknamed the Witch, tried to escape but got caught behind the locked gate. The truth is, no one really knows. So, but it's a scary, dangerous road, which only adds to, and the window really adds to the way that these legends are born. So you already have kind of a creepy road at night, and then you have this little cage that's kind of tucked away, and you get the legend of the Witch's Wall, which is born. So it's a fun one. It's a fun one.
They should have just write the legend.
Right. Yeah.
We'll do that on a side content episode.
Nasty habit.
That'll be a side content episode. We'll rewrite terrible legends and make them better for your town.
My God, that would be so much fun. You just came up with the best idea ever. This is going to be our new podcast. We're not going to do this anymore. We're just going to do really bad versions of
depending on how much you donate to us, depends on how good the story is.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we do it.
It always helps. It always helps. So then we talked about the Riddle House, and the Riddle House is a fun one. This one is pretty well known. I didn't know too much about it. I mean, we covered it. To be fair, I went to our list of places that we haven't covered from Forbes. I was like, boom, got that one. All right, and here we go. Thank you, Forbes list. So for those of you that listened to our side content episode from last week, there was a list of the most haunted homes in all 50 states, and this happened to be the one in Florida. And I was like, we've covered Florida a few times. I was very shocked that St. Augustine wasn't at the top of that list, but this one is, and it really does seem like it has the stories to back it up. So the hauntings aren't just recent. There is documented hauntings for over 100 years at this place. It started with Buck, right? So Buck was he worked at the cemetery, and his ghost had been seen quite a few times, not only just roaming the cemetery, but also walking right up to the gatekeeper's cottage, which is what the Riddle House used to be called. And he would wander up to the porch. And it seems like a weird thing to do. Like, why would this ghost just be standing on the porch? But apparently all of the workers at the cemetery, who basically use this house as like almost like a frat house for cemetery workers, which sounds like the most boring frat house of all time.
What are we doing at a frat house for cemetery workers?
I don't know, just a frat house, but with a lot less STD.
Why did cemetery workers start a fraternity?
What is basically? The name?
I don't know, dormitory housing for cemetery workers, but they had to have these people overnight because they had a huge problem with grave robbing at the time. And you would have people break into these cemeteries because back in the day, and still to this day to an extent, when loved ones would bury family members, they would bury them with their finest jewelry. And that's just easy money for these robbers. And, you know, people going through tough times and just regular old terrible people that would desecrate graves and steal things from these people. So they had to have somebody housed at the cemetery to make sure that people weren't stealing things. And this guy Buck was one of those people that worked there. And apparently on that porch, that's where most of these cemetery workers would take their lunch. That's where they would go out and eat their lunch. It's a relatively small house. If you saw the video, you could see how kind of cramped this little house was. So makes sense. You know, you and the boys just going out on the porch, having some lunch with Buck.
Yeah. Can we talk about the name Buck? Thank
great.
God.
Yeah.
It's great.
Great 19th century name. Buck.
I think it's terrible. I think it's one of the worst names ever.
I feel like if you name your kid Buck, he's immediately 40 years old. There's no one under 40 named Buck, right? I like the name Buck. Good, strong name. You have to say it like that too. You can't just say Buck. You just say Buck.
No, they're also born into overalls. Like you have forced that kid 100%. To wear overalls for the rest of his life.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the original location was
our ghost is named Buck.
Yeah, Bucky McCat.
Bucky is not Buck.
Buck is short for Bucky.
No.
Bucky is the full formal name. Buck is what you call him for short.
No, it's Buck McCat.
No, nobody's ever called him Buck McCat. Come on. That's stupid. Bucky.
I mean,
McCat.
Buck has to be short for something, right? It's Buckard. What is Buck short for? I feel like it's got to be, right? Maybe it's just Buck.
Buckley.
Oh, Buckley's even worse. God.
Mm.
What are we doing with these names?
Nothing. It's just Buck.
All right.
Yeah.
Buckwheat.
Yeah, maybe Buckwheat. Yeah. I like Buckard. I'm going to name my next kid Buckard if I have another kid. Anyways, not going to do that. So
Bucksmith.
Let's get back to the story here. Huh? So it was the gatekeeper's cottage, and it was right outside of Woodlawn Cemetery, which is a pretty cool looking cemetery. We showed a bunch of images in it. And basically, Carl Riddle became the first city manager, and they offered him up the house. They're like, you can live here, but you got to also oversee the cemetery. So he's like, sure, whatever. It's a little gatekeeper job. And he took it and kept on some of the staff. So there were staff that worked there. But the hauntings really started to pick up inside of the house. And this really escalated when one of the workers who worked there fell into a deep depression. He ran into a whole lot of financial trouble. His name was Jonathan, I believe. And he ended up hanging himself from the rafters in the attic. And that sucks. So Carl came home, found the body, removed the body, and also removed the beam that he hanged himself from, which apparently was not load bearing, according to Steph. And so it didn't jeopardize the integrity of the home. You definitely want to look into that first before you go removing beams inside the house. But hauntings really started picking up. Now, I found a bunch of hauntings about this place that were really weird. So you have the tools being moved around from the attic. The attic is obviously one of the more haunted spots in the Riddle House. But you also have a lot of weird things happening with ladders, where ladders are tipping over, or if you leave a ladder up in the house, it'll get moved, or you'll hear it crashing to the ground or whatever. And I was like, that's such a strange thing. Why is it targeting ladders? Well, apparently, if you look at the tragic way that this man's life ended, he did use a ladder to get up to the rafters, and then he kicked out the ladder when he was meeting his end there. So that all starts to add up that it could be his ghost. So that is
weird haunting, though. Who just leaves ladders up around their house to get knocked over? Unless
Yeah,
it was during
I mean,
the construction project.
right.
I think the construction only took 2 days from what I read.
Yeah, I was listening to some interviews with people who work at the house now, and they're saying, like, if you ever make the mistake of leaving up a ladder while you're trying to change out decorations or hang up a picture or something, like it's just known, like, you got to put that ladder away immediately because the ghost is going to mess with it. So it's kind of a unique haunting, ladder ghost. You got to be careful with that kind of stuff, but the ladders would just always get moved. So, but the accounts of the haunting, actually, Carl Riddle had been writing these things down in his diary. And he was saying that the sounds on the steps were so loud that staff members would just quit. And it sounded like it wasn't just the sounds of people walking up and down the stairs, but basically every crew he brought in there just quit because the hauntings were so crazy. But in particular, it was the sounds on these stairs. It was so loud. It was keeping people up at night. Everyone knew that it wasn't coming from a person. And the sounds weren't just footsteps. It sounded like chains that were being dragged up the stairs. And that's such a weird haunting. I mean, I don't think this guy hanged himself with a chain. I think it was probably a rope, I would assume, but I mean, maybe it could be the sound of a ladder going up the stairs, or maybe it's just chains for whatever reason. Maybe it's a different ghost in the house. There's plenty of people that pass through here, and I would assume that there's multiple deaths here. Now, I was watching some stuff that pulled up like a whole bunch of history on everyone who lived and died that, was associated with the Riddle House. It's just too much to track because it was only around for 100 years. Also laid abandoned for a little bit. So anyways, there's just so much here in terms of hauntings. There's people that they'll see a light on in the front window when there's no lights on. They'll leave the building, the lights will turn back on. That's a pretty common one that we get there. But once it got moved after Carl moved out and they moved it over to yesteryear, which his nephew actually saved the building, which is kind of cool. They were going to demolish it. It was basically completely run down. And right before the town was about to knock it down, or the city was about to knock it down, John Riddle came in and said, I would like you to donate this house to me, which I didn't know was a strategy that you could do.
Yeah.
So I didn't even try that when buying my house. I never even thought of just walking and be like, why don't you just give it to me?
Yeah. That's what I'm going to start doing. I'm just going to start walking down my street and see how many I can get. That's all good.
It is wild, but there's actually a reason behind this. For one, it had some historical value, but Riddle didn't build this house. Like I get it. He lived there for like 30 years or whatever, but why is it so significant? I don't know. It is what it is. Right. But anyways, so he goes in, he's like, you're going to tear it down anyways. This place is a pile of junk. Let me donate the house to me and you don't have to give me the land. So the city is like, okay, we don't have to spend the money demolishing the house. He's going to raise the money or pay for the moving of this house. Take it and go. Fine. After they denied him a few times, I guess. They're like, no, dude, shut up. We're going to knock it down. But then eventually they're like, fine, take the house. So they did. They broke the house into pieces, moved it a couple miles up the road to this place called Yesteryear Village. And that was it. They rebuilt the house there. But that wasn't it for the hauntings.
He should have just moved in. He should just be like, well, now I'm here. You gave me the house.
Can't knock it. My house. Put it up on cinder blocks. I don't know. But once this house was moved, the haunting started up again. It started with the construction crews, as we mentioned earlier, as the opening ghost story alluded to, where the construction crews were so plagued by hauntings with their tools getting thrown around, windows being broken, voices, all sorts of just terrifying stuff for this construction crew as they were trying to put this house back together. It was terrifying for them, and a bunch of them, I guess, quit. They actually stopped construction on the house for like 6 months because of how bad the haunting had gotten, and they just had so much trouble finding a crew that could get this job done. And eventually they did, but the hauntings just didn't slow down. And this is when you started getting like full-bodied apparitions. People would see something up in the third window that they explain as like a torso ghost, and they assume that this might be the ghost of the guy hanging. A lot of people would just assume that it's a mannequin in the attic window, but I guess there weren't any mannequins up there in that attic. And,
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's a creepy one. Very creepy, very creepy. But speaking of creepy, the ghosts also like to like touch and grab people's hair, and that's creepy. Me and Rob don't have to worry about that, but yeah,
No, just don't touch my hair. It's
tough.
It's too luxurious.
They're gonna have to grab us by the beard. Yeah. You have that, and then there's also several sightings of, wait for it, a woman in white.
Oh,
Yeah, so she has a white outfit. She's been seen wandering around, and then when you approach her, she'll vanish, or she'll kind of like dip around a corner. Now, it's a little tricky with yesteryear, and I feel like you might get a few more quote unquote ghost sightings because this place is full of actors. It's like a Plymouth Plantation almost, where you have reenactments going on here. Mm-hmm. You'll have a lady on the porch in a Victorian dress or whatever era the house is from. This place, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of a mixed bag of different hauntings inside. Chicago says, if he hung himself in the barn, why would you see him in the house? He was not in the barn. I don't even think this place has a barn, actually. So if I said that, I misspoke. But no, he hanged himself in the attic of the house. So it was inside there. But you have a lot of actors that are kind of wandering around this from house to house. And, you know, you'll go there and they'll tell the story or whatever. But I feel like maybe people are mistaking those for ghosts sometimes, where they see an actor, they see a woman in a Victorian dress and she dips around a corner. You're like, oh my God, I just saw a ghost. But in reality, it was just a lady going to go smoke a cigarette out in the backyard or something. So I feel like you could have some of that, but there was a particular creepy story that I did mention where there was a tour going on, and these people on the tour, they saw a couple very finely dressed in these, like they said like Victorian era, but it wouldn't be that exact year, but who knows? So they saw a couple and they said, wow, that is a wonderfully dressed couple. Fantastic. They look great. And then the tour went on, and the tour guide's like, actually, I have no idea who those people are. But later on, they broke out a picture of the Riddle House from like 100 years prior. And in that picture, to a T, was that couple that everybody saw. And everybody's like, that's too good to be true. And then they're like, okay, let's grab those people and tell them how spot on they were with all of their things. And these people were never there. They checked with employees. They said, we don't employ anyone who dresses like that. There's not even anyone assigned to this house right now. So they think that they might have actually seen the ghosts. And it was just insane timing of breaking out that picture and seeing the exact couple that everybody saw in that picture. So yes, you could hire actors that look like them. You could get the clothes that you saw in that picture, and they could have pulled a prank and disappeared, but somebody would have known something. So it is a really cool story. I do wish I could find the original photo, but I haven't seen it yet. But either way, you're not going to be able to compare and contrast because we don't have a picture of the ghosts or the actors that they saw. So pretty cool stuff.
Cool one. It's kind of a common haunting, or a few common hauntings here that we see in a lot of different places. One is obviously the apparitions of people that are recognized from old pictures. That's a pretty good one. Also, when you renovate a house, that stirs up the hauntings. And this is, I think, clearly what's the case here. Because not only was this place renovated, it was cut in half and relocated. And if something like that is something that annoys the ghosts, I can't imagine something more extreme than cutting a house in half and relocating it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Didn't that kind of happen at your house, Jesse?
Yeah, it did. I thought you were talking about the hauntings, which is a whole different story. But yeah, so basically my house now is half of what it used to be. And they cut the house in half and just moved half of it a couple streets over. And that's a whole different house now. So
that's so weird. Do you think that it was because somebody knocked on the door and was like, I'd like you to donate me your house? And they were like, no, but I can do half.
Right. Yeah. Basically. We went for a walk one day because we had reached out to the former homeowners and we're like, where is the other half of our house? They're like, oh, it's on Chestnut Street or something like that. I don't remember exactly what street it was, but we took a walk. It was only a few streets away. So we took a walk and we're like, maybe we'll be able to find it. And we're walking down the street like, maybe that's it. Maybe. Oh, there it is. Boom. Just the other half of our house. We're like, okay, that's precise. They didn't even change the color. It's exactly. And thank God our house looks complete. It doesn't look like it was cut in half. Their house looks like it was cut in half, like straight out of Disney or something. Or and it's just like, they have a regular side of the half and then just a completely straight drop down on one other half. You're like, okay, there it is. But anyways, that's relevant. But yeah, there's no bigger remodel to a house than cutting it into pieces and moving it to a new village and reassembling it, right? But
Dana asked if the other half of your house is haunted. It'd be funny if both your houses were haunted with like half ghosts.
Maybe. I don't really know.
If you guys donate enough money in Patreon, we will try to buy the other half of Jesse's old house and reconnect it.
But only by staples. We will staple them back together.
We will staple it.
Which is the recommended process for reconnecting separated homes.
That's right.
So, yeah, a lot of little construction tips for you today on the episode. Pretty good stuff. But yesteryear seems like it's full of haunted places. I couldn't find a lot of information on this. I know they hold a fair in Florida every year at yesteryear, which pulls in like 500,000 people. So that sounds awful. I won't be going to that. But the whole village seems pretty cool. It's kind of just a mixed bag of historical homes where instead of tearing them down, they move them to a yesteryear village. And that's an awesome thing to do because as a lover of history and all things paranormal, I hate when they tear down spooky places. Move it to the pet cemetery of houses over here. Like move it to yesteryear. That's awesome. So definitely gonna go there. But I think there's enough inside that village, which there should be, because you're taking all these historical places that could be haunted, putting them all together. And they said that, I was listening to a quote from one of the employees there. He said that yesteryear village was built for the living, but has been overtaken by the dead, which is a terrifying statement. Yeah, it's like, so they're saying that basically like all of these ghosts are like energized by being surrounded by all these other historical homes in theory. And they're kind of just, it's like a retirement home. They're just bouncing around. They're hanging out with each other. It's a weird situation to put all of these old historic homes in the same place. It's kind of cool. So maybe we'll cover yesteryear village on a future episode. Could be fun.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. But that's the Riddle House. I believe, was it Eric? Yeah. Eric said he had been to the house. I would love to hear what you got. He says the fair is great. I definitely don't overeat at the fair. I don't doubt it. I've reached a point in my life where I hate crowds. So I try to avoid festivals and fairs and things like that. But, fun fairs are fun, and ones at historical places would actually be pretty cool. So, yeah, but that's the start of the Riddle House. It does look like it's a place that we could go investigate, so we could save it for part 2. I think if we do investigate it, we try to investigate multiple homes inside of Yesteryear Village, and that'd be cool to do a little Yesteryear episode. I really hope I'm getting the name of that place right, because I've said it 400 times.
And if it's not, it is now.
Yeah, if it's not named Yesteryear, you're going to go ahead and change it because that's a cool name.
A couple people in chat seem to be familiar with it. You would have been corrected, I believe.
As I usually am. Yes.
Yeah.
But that is mostly Palm Beach, a little bit of West Palm Beach. But that is some of the hauntings there. There are more. If I do go down there, and I'm sure I will get down there eventually, I would take a little drive up to the country club, stop by the Witch's Wall, check out that little thing. The big debunking of that little mysterious window is that it's just some sort of septic thing or something. Like, I guess if you go up to it and look at it, you can just see a pipe right there. You're like, oh, this isn't very mysterious at all. It just looks creepy. But that's, it was fun to talk about. I enjoyed that legend. And we have a great new show idea, which is just ruining legends. It's gonna be great. Love it. Anything else you guys want to touch on Palm Beach before we hop into some formalities?
No, but big shout out to Crystal Quinn, one of our great guests, who says that we can stay at her place. She just recently moved to Florida, so we can stay there and then go investigate ghosts with her, I'm assuming.
Oh, that would be fun.
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't that be fun?
See you tomorrow.
We'll be there. Yeah.
Moving in.
Was it an episode of The Office when Michael Scott, she's like, oh, you should come down sometime. He's like, okay. And he just goes and books a plane ticket. He's like, I'll be there on Friday. With like his new district manager or something. Yeah, that was one of the more uncomfortable moments in that episode. Anyways, reviews? Got any reviews you want to hop into?
Yeah, I got a couple. This first one is actually from YouTube. It's from Sarah C. She said, I don't have Spotify or iTunes, so let this be my 5-star review, y'all. I love this podcast. I watch/listen to it on YouTube, usually at night. I love the stories, the research the host put into it, and the banter. I've seen almost all of them except the early ones. I can't find those. Well, good news for you. We have an entire playlist where you can start, and you left a comment on one of the first episodes, so I think you ended up finding it. I don't get the Rob hate either. Neither do I. Imagine hating me.
I don't get how you don't get the Rob hate.
I just say it how it is, and I only say true things.
That's true.
And I only eat proper foods.
That's right.
What was the name on that review?
Sarah C.
Okay.
Also, just a reminder, I kind of threw this in last minute last week. We were going to be doing some giveaways for shirts when we hit certain milestones on iTunes and Spotify reviews. So once we hit 750 iTunes reviews, we are going to do a giveaway for anyone that left a 5-star review. The way you can prove that to us is drop it in Discord under giveaway, show us your 5-star review, or email us your 5-star review. And that's how we'll enter you into the raffle for either of those. So if you're in the iTunes one, you do it for iTunes. If you're in the Spotify one, or you can do it on both and be an absolute legend. I have 3 more real quick. The first one is from John. This is all from iTunes. And he left a 5-star review saying, little fun fact, if you flip Florida upside down, it looks like the Grinch. So fitting.
That is true.
Ties right in.
Nice. And like upside down corn on the cob.
Yes.
This next one is from La Belle Chienne, I think, titled Ghosties, Ghoulies, and Tomfooleries. As a 63-year-old cranky lady with 1 foot closer to the grave than these guys, I have to say, I absolutely love this podcast. So pull up a chair, grab a coffee, and some fresh baked cookies. Then listen as Jesse, Dave, and Rob make this a refreshing take on the haunts and haunted across the country. They delve into the history as well as the paranormal of the locations they review, with an eye to questioning some of the more skeptical tales of some, quote, haunted places. I really get a kick out of the banter between the three and the ribbing they give each other while covering some of the eeriest, weirdest, and strangest haunts. They even investigate places themselves, making it more interesting as they give a summary of what evidence they uncover. A definite must for us paranormal podcast listeners, plus a YouTube channel for those of you who crave the visuals. Thank you, gentlemen, for all the interesting information and hard work you put into providing us with hours of the spookies. P.S. Most haunted in Virginia, not Ferry Farm. It's the Peyton Randolph House in Williamsburg. Bonus, you can book it as lodging and investigate it. So thank you for that tip and that great review.
I will say that is one of the most thorough reviews.
Very thorough review.
Really, I listened to it like I was learning new things about us.
I was like, I want to check this podcast out. Oh, this is right up my alley.
Right, even Rob might start listening to it. Who knows?
This next one is from Huge Todd Fan is their name. And
where Rob's going to change his name mysteriously to Todd next week. He's like, well, I have a huge fan.
I have a huge Todd. This one is titled Ah!
Nice. A little more enthusiasm on that, but we'll take it.
They wrote, I really like ghost and humor. I love how they mix scariness, ghosties, teasing, humor, and respect. It's entertaining and informative. You guys made me believe in ghosties, although I've never really experienced a haunting myself other than when I visited the Titanic traveling exhibit, and I got really stressed and sad, which is a common haunting for that exhibit. P.S. You need to do some episodes in the Titanic, please. I think they meant on the Titanic. We could try to do it in the Titanic, I suppose.
Here's what we could build a submarine and take it down. I heard that.
Yeah, you can use a PlayStation controller, I think.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They finish it up with, you make me feel like I know you guys and the people in the chat, even though I've never had the chance to join a live show because of my schedule. This podcast helps motivate me to do chores and other things I have trouble motivating myself to do. Thank you three so much for making my days fun and spooky.
Hell yeah.
So, some good reviews.
Great reviews.
Great reviews.
We've been talking about covering some of the Titanic stuff on Cursed Possessions episode potentially for the future.
We had a quick little one in a Haunted Headlines one time where somebody back right after the Titanic sunk within 10 years had seen the captain of the ship walking in Baltimore, I believe. So it was a little quick hitter, but
Yeah.
that was in one of the newspapers from like back in
Feeds into the
1950.
conspiracy that it wasn't really the Titanic that sank and they sank the other boat. Or I saw that online. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And definitely not true. But yeah, conspiracy theories are fun. I will make a quick announcement that on Friday, I am going to drop another album. So I've been working on this one. This one's a little bit different than what you have previously heard. So if you haven't already, you can go to Spotify and check out the official Hometown Ghost Stories soundtrack. So I'll plug that again real quick for the older album now that it is you can go listen. If you like the music in this podcast, you can go find it on Spotify or Apple Music or Pandora, or wherever in the world you listen to music. It's available on all platforms. So you can go check that out. And on Friday at midnight, we are going to drop a new album, which I let Captain McSlugs come up with the name of. So the new album is officially called Night Fist Speedwalk. And that comes out on Friday at midnight. You can pre-order it. I'll drop it in the comments here. Make sure you do that. And if you don't mind, give me a little follow on Spotify as an artist. So it's going to be fun. 13 brand new tracks. You might have heard a preview here or there on one of these episodes, but for the most part, it's all brand new. It is all brand new stuff. And I've got Seth on guitar on a track, which is fun. And for the most part, it's more of like an electronic album, but I also have a full feature song with the one and only Casher, who he created the song for our horror movie reviews. So if you like that tune there, that's actually a Casher production, but he also sings, and he sings on a song on this one. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm excited about this album. It's got more of like an 80s kind of synthwave, kind of Stranger Things type vibe to it. So definitely check it out. You can pre-save the album on Spotify now. I just dropped that link. So yeah, but Friday midnight, I think pre-sale goes on tonight at midnight. So pretty soon, but check it out.
Very cool.
Let's hop into patrons real quick on this. Was that it for reviews?
Yeah, that's all I have for this
Okay,
week.
cool. Let's start with our VIP, starting with Jay Gooch. 725, Jackie F, Jeremy M, Casey W, Brendina 77, Kathy F, Kitten Clown Dozer, Ghost Nurse JP, which RIP of the week.
RIP.
Yes, indeed. Another Vice. Dave has a new kangaroo onesie with a bottom flap. Tess, who dropped 50 in super chat. Again, thank you so much, Tess. You're always very generous and a legend. We have Mother McTibbles and her herd of ice cold hand ankle grabbing ghost children. Thank you. We have Jesse is the most handsome, strong, and brave. Dave D, Kate and Steve M, Sharon V, Glitter T's, Cammy from Washington, Kelly C, Jennifer P, Nick, Liz Young, Donnie N, Inspires Gaming, Allison V, Robert H, Laveau's Grave Rentals, new roommates every year, Anna C, Jeannie, Mallory from Montana, Mom and Pops W, Papa Squatch, Lisa J, and Mike Oubliette. Thanks for being VIPs. Next up, we're going to hop into the Warren's Wards, and let's start that off with Degenerate Gambler Voodoo Ghost Who Shouldn't Have Hit on 19. And they were very generous and very considerate by putting underscores in between each word there so I could read it properly. That was great. We have the Viking Gamer, Jamie E, Nick M, Jeremy M, Beth C, Serena, Shawners, Leslie F, Rachel G, Her Lady Spookship, Schlosh Tanosh Gosh, Wahini Pirate, Julie Gouldy, Eugene M, Arcade Hunters, The Bottom of Colby's Bottle, Kath Q, DC, Chris Connolly, LBBS founder, Next HTGS guest, the other Rachel B, Sarah Cook, Janice G, Lily, Rachel B, Vampire Sandpaper on Rob's Toes. Just a girl with two right feet. That's an improvement on Sydney's name. So I guess maybe she turned 13 and now has two right feet. That happens sometimes.
Yes. Congratulations.
We have a ghost doing more pulling hair on Worth Ave, Florida. Steph on guitar, and Human Soup. By the way, great name, Human Soup. I think that's Sarah, right? One of our earliest patrons. Just Human Soup. Moving on, let's hop into the Ghost Pirate Mafia, starting with Just Ghostly. I'd still not know Pandorica 416. I'm going to struggle with that one forever. You should change it to Todd.
Wow.
Deb62, or just spell it out for me like I'm an idiot, because I am, and just really give me a in-depth analysis on how to pronounce that. We have Karen L, Deb62.
Wahini Pirates did that for you.
That's right, and it's been flawless ever since. Michael M, Tanya C, Jennifer A, Carrie H, Amber R, Brant C, Emily P, the mannequin in the white. The mannequin in white in the attic window. Shane J, Mrs. Nardozzi, Shane O'Mac, Joe, Trevor S, Amanda H, Christina S, Kate C, Kelly C, bloop, bloop. Crazy Legs, West Virginia coal miner, Cowboys are 3-7. Just Call Me Bree, Miss Macabre, Michelle, Naroku, Cold Warrior, a kid named Max who used to get fat stacks out on the corner with Rob's toe-sucking collection.
Ah, God damn it.
D from H-Town. Dave, how do you pronounce this? Spogils. Sponge.
I think it's just spruce or something like that.
Splush.
Yep, we like that. Danish for Ghost Meta A. Sarah B, Monster Mom 04, Wicked Alley, Dark Snark. This podcast brought to you by the number G, as in goopy toes dipped in sauce and served to Rob with hot dog ends.
God damn it.
You've let out way too many secrets.
I'm never telling anybody anything again.
Well, apparently you've told him everything.
I have not told them everything.
In that one word, in that one Patreon name, you have like 5 different things that you don't like in that one thing. Anyways, Morgan S. Rob's big toe is named Book. He done. I stubbed my book. Anyways, Wayne C. Rob buys pictures of my dog licking my toes. What is wrong with her? What? Jesus Christ. Crystal Quinn, aka not a Rob fan. That's like 6 Rob names in a row. Thick Boy Freddy's baby mama has not yet been yeeted. Alicia E. Thick Boy Freddy finally found a lighthouse over the weekend and may or may not have crossed one off his yeet sheet. Swanee. Cut my house into pieces. This beach is my last resort. That was a lot of fun. We liked that.
That's pretty good.
Everyone liked that. We all enjoyed it. Sam from Nepal, Joe R. Al Capone, Huggy Bear, Jesse will tickle your baby and comfort you. You know, I'm going to ask you to change that. I am not going to tickle anyone's baby. Not going to happen. Solar Flare, Mariah M, Kira Lee J, Anthony, surely not everyone was Kung Fu Fighting T, Cody G, Brainhead W, Hooply Whooply, Bridge Witch, and the Polkageist. Thank you so much for as little as $3 a month on Patreon. You can join up, get ad-free episodes, bump your way all the way up to VIP, or join the $5,000 tier where I will show up and tickle your baby. I'm not going to do that.
For $5,000 for us, you are.
I am not going to tickle anyone's baby for any.
Here's this terrible habit.
It's just me, this witch. Just we're gonna end the show before I say something that's gonna get us canceled, anyways. And I will not be tickling any of your children. So moving on. That's pretty much it. We'll be back on next Tuesday with another live episode. This week, side
Crabs are
content.
coming.
We have some side content coming out. This week is, I don't remember, but we got the Ghost of Charlie Chaplin coming up. We have our Patreon exclusive coming up this week as well. So lots and lots and lots of content coming.
Yes. Tess asked for 5,000. Will I tickle Rob? The answer is yes. Absolutely. We'll do it. We'll do it. Confirmed. Once again, shout out to Another Vice, Ryan P, and Tess for gifting memberships on YouTube. If you got a gifted membership, make sure you say thank you. Leave a 5-star review for us. That's the best way to support the show if you can't do it financially. And that'll pretty much do it. Anything else?
That's it for me.
Night Fist Speedwalk, all stores on Friday. Go check it out. Thank you guys for listening. And as soon as I find this outro video, we will leave. Goodbye.